What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Zero Distortion. Today, I'm talking with Aaron Nichols. He is host of This Week in Solar, and he's one of the few people in the industry who can explain what's going on without drowning you in buzzwords and PowerPoints. The guy's worked in sales, installs, and marketing. He's been featured in just about every solar publication out there, and he's one who's not afraid to call BS when he sees it. But before we get started, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss conversations like this one. Straight talk with no spin. Let's get into it. Aaron, welcome to Zero Distortion. Great to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Russ. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that our paths have crossed digitally so many times. This is the first time I'm actually talking to you. So I'm excited to be here.
Oh, likewise. This is going to be a great conversation. And before we really get into it, I talked a little bit in the opening, introduced you, but give some more information about who you are, what you're into, that type of thing.
So my title is Research and Policy Specialist at Exact Solar. Don't be fooled by the title. I'm a sales and marketing guy, but we were working on getting a lot of earned media earlier in my role, and we just kept getting feedback from reporters that they didn't want to talk to a marketing guy. And so we came up with a smokescreen where we were just like, all right, we've come up with the title Research and Policy Specialist. And, that means that I can talk to reporters. I could still do all the sales stuff I need to do. I wear a lot of hats at Exact Solar, but mainly I handle creating organic content, screening incoming leads that come in through our website as a result of the organic content we create, and running a little news channel called This Week in Solar.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that, but let me take it back because you've done the work. You've kind of been all across the solar sector. I'll say from the roof to the headlines now. So, what part of your, let's call it, solar journey taught you the most? Was it selling? Was it installing? Writing about it? Combination of all of those?
It was learning to install, definitely. And then it was writing. I mean, if you really want to learn a subject, research and write 100 blog articles about it, trying to target exact and partial match keywords locally for a solar business or whatever business. I mean, if you really want to learn something, I think writing is always the best way, not even just to learn about it, but also just to organize your thoughts and then really just get things loaded in there.
Yeah, it kind of goes to something I've heard over the years. Whenever you write it down, and I would say typing it out, in today's day and age, but actually the words coming out of your brain onto the screen or onto paper, you seem to retain that information a little bit better. Is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah. And it was the training that I did that got me the work that then I went to go do a bunch of writing about. But it all started with me doing my NABCEP certification, I can't say I'm NABCEP certified. I'm a NABCEP-PV Associate. Doing that through Grid Alternatives helped me then serve the clients that I was serving in the beginning so much better. And then as soon as people found out I had a certification from NABCEP, then they were just like, oh my gosh, okay, there's no one else writing for the solar industry. And I got a lot of work back in late 2023, early 2024, before I was full-time with Exact Solar.
Okay, cool. Well, I think something else I've heard, I think you put it in a post or something, because you're very active on LinkedIn, and I see your posts all the time, and they're great.
Thanks, man.
So you kind of said that maybe numbers don't change minds, but stories do. And I agree. I mean, data, stats, all of that's one thing, but numbers are numbers, and not everybody can relate to numbers, but I would say most everybody can relate to stories. So is there an example of something that moved somebody maybe from anti-solar into maybe accepting it or understanding it better?
Yeah, there's been so many, and this is a huge soapbox for me. So if you don't mind if I go off on it for a bit.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. So I do get a lot of flack. Sometimes people will make fun of me for saying storytelling is so important, because as a broad level stroke, saying stories over numbers, it's very easy to just be like, yeah, what the hell are you talking about? But I think what's important there is every set of numbers contains individual stories, and it's only an individual story that will actually move hearts and minds. I just actually got to speak about this at the American Solar Energy Society conference earlier this week. And there's a data set that's been pretty well studied and understood now, that when people see one story, they are so much more likely to take action than if they see a large set of numbers. And nonprofits understand this really well. Like, good nonprofits understand this. I think the example I used in my speech was Compassion International. When I was growing up, we sponsored a child, I believe, growing up in Honduras as a family. And every couple months, we would get an update. We would get a letter from that child and a couple new pictures. And because we were consistently getting those updates, we sponsored that child for 15 years. But the emotional connection there is we were able to make a difference in the life of one person. And this has been studied over and over again in social science. If you show one person or one animal experiencing a problem, you are so much more likely to get donations than if you show a group of animals experiencing a problem. If you say 10,000 puppies don't have homes, that is a unfaceable problem that someone may not want to get involved in right away. But if you show a picture of one puppy that you can adopt today, that is in your community, that's manageable, you can just drive down there and you can pick up the puppy. So one thing that frustrates me about the solar industry, as someone who doesn't come from a technical background, is very emotional, and is very marketing and sales minded, is we seem to insist on talking about solar in the most boring way imaginable. We just love charts and graphs and statistics, and we always think that we're going to be able to convince people with them. But the joke I like to use is, how many of you have ever gotten in an argument with your significant other and then just showed them a graph right away? And then, people, like, maybe one person will raise their hand in the audience and I'll be like, and how did that go? And they'll kind of shake their head. I'm like, yeah, not well. But we consistently think we can do the same thing with strangers. In our online discourse, someone says something like, solar panels cause cancer. And we say, no, they don't. Here's a graph. And it doesn't hit. It doesn't connect. So I think the best example I have of solar changing someone's mind, that was a nice long-winded preamble, but I like to preface, because when I say storytelling matters, there are concrete things. It's not this high-level esoteric hippie thing. And the best example is, we did an installation on a school a couple of years ago, and we did a big event around it. And we had an article we created around it. We had local congressmen came and speak. When we opened the installation and did a press event, so many people showed up because of the power of, like, this off-grid solar energy system powers a greenhouse, which is battery backed, which is off-grid, which now grows organic produce year-round in a food desert in inner city Philadelphia. We really hammered on that story. And all of the resources we've created for that, there's been 3 different times that I've had people troll me on LinkedIn who are saying, like, fossil fuel is so much more important. Like, you just can't do the same kind of things that you can do with solar power. I show them that story, and I'm actually direct messaging, not being mean, not trying to own them publicly, but just DMing them saying the impact this had on the lives of children in Philadelphia. I've actually gotten several people to admit to me that, oh, there might be something more here than we thought.
I love that, especially, I mean, social media, these platforms, that's where most of these exchanges take place, it seems, in this day and age. And what you just said about DMing them as opposed to maybe commenting, that I think is pretty powerful. It sounds like you've had a lot of success in that regard.
Yeah. And if someone's being just, like, really mean in my comments section, I don't generally engage, because I don't think it's my job to convince extremists. I actually believe that it's my job to draw out extremists and just let people see how irrationally they're behaving. I think that's what the comments section is for, you make a statement and then people yell at you and you take the high road. And rather than trying to own them or throwing graphs at them, you can just kind of let the comments sit there and be like, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be nice and professional and say what I believe. And I'm not going to pretend I'm a martyr. I'm just here to show the benefits of this thing.
Yeah, that's what I tried to take the same approach with. There's not to get off on the trolls and the haters, but whenever you get someone who they're going to comment and say something, some of them come off a little bit more like they're actually questioning, right?
Yeah.
And I'll engage with those folks. Hey, well, I thought this. Well, no, and you kind of talk them out and you have that conversation. But I agree. Whenever they get into dick mode, I just kind of disengage.
Yes.
It doesn't, so many people are just trying to dunk on others, and it's like, I just say what you want, and I'll even tell them, hey, all right, best of luck, and I'm disengaging, and then they just keep going, and it does help the algorithm. I'll say that.
Yeah. It absolutely does. And that's, I do get excited when extremists show up to troll my posts, because I'm always just like, oh man, this is going to get so much more engagement than if I had just left it.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I think it's important to know, like, people will say the internet rewards extreme perspectives. I think that's only partially true. As someone who grew up quasi-religious and has spent a lot of time around extremists and has spent a lot of time in different religious communities and traveled all around the world, I think extremism exists in every community. You just have people who rationally believe something to a crazy degree. And it's not just that the algorithms reward that behavior. It's that extremists are the people who can just wang on about whatever nonsense they believe for the longest amount of time with no response, which is what you need to build a following online. Is you need a long drought where no one's listening to what you say, and then eventually you start finding your people. But yeah, extremists are the ones who are most well suited to do that, because they already believe they're martyrs. Feeding into their persecution complex just keeps them going. And so, it's our job to just be like, yeah, these people are out there. It's not our job to convince them. It's just our job to show how crazy they are and bring them out and let them show how nuts they are publicly.
Yeah, I mean, they are pretty open about saying how they feel, and some of these I used to go back and forth a little bit, and just the misinformation / disinformation. It's like, all right, there's not going to be any changing of the mind here, but hopefully someone else is reading that and saying, oh, okay. And a lot of times you get other people that comment on there as well and be like, they'll jump in, and a lot of others can do the fighting if they want to. But social media is, that's really changed the world for sure, and it definitely has with clean energy. Let's talk a little bit about the state of clean energy right now. I mean, we're early August. Lots of things have happened, including I'm going to start calling it the Big Billionaire Bill that was passed. Right. Keep the bees in line. But what's been your experience since that's happened? Plus these executive orders that are coming out, they just are now trying to pull like solar for all funding, which I think is from everything I'm reading, that's illegal, and that's money that's been out for grants. It's already supposedly been spent, or it's supposed to be treated as spent. So what are you seeing? I know you've done some traveling here recently. What's on the ground that you're running into? How are people reacting, and what's with Exact Solar? What are you guys experiencing?
Yeah, we are experiencing crazy volume in the short term. There are so many people because we're behind the meter. I don't know a lot about utility scale solar. My whole career has been behind the meter solar. And there's a lot of people who, knowing that the residential tax credit is going to expire at the end of the year, are just trying to get installations in as fast as they can. I mean, our lead volume has tripled and we're booking jobs in January already. So short term, it's been crazy. It's been good crazy. It's been really fun to, serve all these folks and see our lead volume triple and just like start organizing and booking jobs out and figuring out how we're going to finance in a different way so that the numbers still make sense next year. That's all been great. But yeah, it's disheartening to see as well, because I came in mid 2023 when it was a pretty rosy time for the clean energy industry. So it was I got spoiled right away. And so it's disheartening to come in and see this kind of rosy outlook for clean energy and then just watch like our effort and our policy and our lobbying just kind of break against this rock of indifference for the administration, and then watch all of this misinformation win out, and all of these things that people have fought so hard for just be scaled back and eliminated. I've been joking that, if this is a trilogy, we're clearly in The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, that's
we just got our hand cut off. We just found out Darth Vader's our father. Now we have to regroup and figure out where to go next.
That is a great way to put it. And they say it's always darkest before the dawn. That's something I've heard of. And I would say it's pretty dark right now when you're looking at the renewable sector.
Yeah.
Are you guys mostly residential, or do you guys do C&I as well?
We're about half and half.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, with residential running out at the end of this year, that's really going to affect that residential market. C&I, it's got a little longer runway, as does the utility scale. But I had a panel on shortly after the Billionaire Bill was passed, and we were talking about supply and demand. The demand being the consumption of electricity is just continuing to go up and up and up, right?
Right.
With AI, with the data centers, with just electrification. EVs, people are trying to say they're dying off. No, they're still going. So you got that need as well. But the supply side, the generation, that's really going to drop off here in the next couple of years. I would say I think a lot of these projects are already dropping off just because they can't make that deadline now and still get those tax incentives. How much do you feel the increase in electricity rates, and I'm going to even throw out there brownout, blackout situations, because I personally think those are coming. To me, it's just a simple, look at the math. You've got this much electricity, but you've got this much demand. Who's gonna not get the electrons into their location? And to me, that's going to offset that 30% ITC, for example. Is that kind of your thought as well, or do you see it a little bit different?
No, absolutely it is. And I don't want to say that we're lucky, because we just had a record increase in June in our region. Bills around here went up by 20% in some places. And then we just had PJM's capacity auction, and it came in even higher than it did last summer. And we're in their region. So I'm as well lucky, because that sucks for so many people. It's going to be awful. Like for anyone who's low income and just has to pay more for electricity for no reason, for no discernible reason, or for preventable reasons. So I don't want to say that we're lucky, but it certainly makes us optimistic for the outlook, just knowing that the prices are going to continue to go up, and we're going to continue hammering on that message of like, you are at the mercy of a machine you have no control over. You're going to continue paying more for this product every year, and it's never going to innovate. It's never going to change. You're just going to pay more for it. And even like more than inflation for it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, typical escalation nationally is in that, 3% year over year. You were just saying 20% in 1 year. I think we're going to start seeing that be more of the norm, double-digit increases. How can it not, right?
Yeah.
Unless, they can keep some coal plants online a little bit longer. All right, I don't think that's the answer. That'll help with some generation, but those are so expensive to keep online. I saw the coal plants in Michigan, coal-fired plants in Michigan. I think there was two of them that the Department of Energy, they said you got to keep these online. However, they pulled those strings, but they were set to retire at the end of I think around Memorial Day.
Yeah.
All of a sudden in May, they're like, nope, you got to keep running. We need you to keep running. And it's cost, I want to say already like $9 million more to keep these things online just the first month or two. So point being, it's going to be a lot more expensive to keep these existing plants running, much less bring more generation online from fossil fuels, because the steam turbine generators aren't. They're not on a shelf. They're 5, 6, 7 year lead time. So again, it turns into clean energy is going to be what saves everybody. It's just going to cost a lot more than what it normally would be.
Yeah. And it defies all reasoning. But I think it's zero distortion. So I'll speak freely, but
absolutely.
This to me is just a fight between legacy capital that is okay with living in a pile of pollution and trash as long as they keep making money, and people who have a better new solution that have been rebuffed at every turn and like are just having things made unnecessarily complex for them, literally just so that we can keep doing things in a way that's inefficient and doesn't work anymore and doesn't serve us as a species or as a country. It's absurd.
Well said. Could not agree more. It's old fossil fuel money that's pushing a lot of these policies. I mean, I don't think anybody can argue that. Drill baby drill, it does not make sense. It just doesn't. You can get into the math of that too, but it's crazy. The Big Billionaire Bill that was passed, I'm going to just keep calling it that. There was that while they're taking away from clean energy, as far as tax incentives, and keep in mind a tax incentive for folks who may not understand, you actually have to build something to be able to claim that tax incentive. They're not giving you money. That's not how these things work. I think that's a misconception that some folks have. But fossil fuel has always had all of these subsidies for 100+ years. They added to it. They gave them some more stuff that's in the fine print, I guess, is somewhere in the 900 pages or whatever of that bill. So again, they've helped that industry and taken away from clean energy. But I still agree with you 100%. Clean energy is the way to go. It's not going to change anything from that perspective. What's going to change is it's going to cost customers more and more and more to implement these solutions. It just costs the American consumer those dollars.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, speaking of, congressmen like Chip Roy or just anyone who's completely in fossil fuel pocket, I'm sure the quote, it's very difficult to get someone to understand something if their salary depends on them not understanding it. And I think we saw a lot of that when we were lobbying and when we were talking to our representatives, just so many people who were like, just completely misunderstanding what residential solar is, what commercial solar is, why we're incentivizing it, why it matters, what speed to deploy actually is.
Yeah.
But something that makes me really hopeful, I mean, another quote I love is, first they ignore you, then they make fun of you, then they fight you, then you win. And I think we're firmly in step 3 of that process. And when I was at the American Solar Energy Society conference earlier this week, someone said something that I thought was really insightful, which was the level of antagonism we're facing as an industry right now must be directly proportional to the level of threat we actually bring to something that is so established and entrenched.
Oh yeah, the fossil fuel industry. I've been in power gen for over 30 years, and I've seen behind the curtain of fossil fuel. I know it. I've been in those rooms. I've been in those meetings. I've been through the plants. They are very scared. They're terrified, and we're not trying to beat out that sector. We still need coal-fired plants. We still need natural gas plants. We still need those things for now. But there is a better way forward, and we have to plan for that and then work the plan. So yeah, it shouldn't be an us or them, but that's kind of what they've turned it into. And everything's so polarizing. I mean, I hear these folks, and wow, I'll just call it disinformation. It's lies. People say things on a Fox News, or Chip Roy's a jackass, right? He doesn't know. He says these things, and I'm like, they have no idea. They don't understand it at all, or they're just intentionally lying to folks. So, that's definitely something we're having to push back against.
And that level of misinformation, I mean, obviously, it's so unnecessary when, if you're already an established energy generator, you can just learn to generate energy in new ways. You already have a business, you already have the infrastructure, you already have everything you need. So it's sad to watch. But I do think we know that so much of the American public does support solar power. And we know that so much of the public does not seem to be behind what the administration's doing. Unfortunately, they've worked very hard to kind of tie wind and solar in with their anti-woke messaging. They've just kind of tried to tie renewable energy into culture war nonsense that we have nothing to do with. It's just a better product. And just because, some more left-leaning people happen to like renewable energy doesn't make it a woke technology.
No. I mean, it's just about the bottom line and efficiency, and again, the new tech. There's just a better way to do something. We all still need the electricity. There's just a better way to generate it, and just burning stuff. I mean, the rest of the world is moving forward with this tech. They're not slowing down. I see them throwing rocks at China about this. And I'm not saying China doesn't need some rocks thrown at them. Don't get me wrong. But whenever they're talking about, well, they have all these coal plants. They do, but they have way more clean energy coming online. They need these coal plants because their economy is growing, and they're all that good stuff. But if they could serve everything with clean energy to keep up with the growth, I mean, they would be doing that. We're going to be using 19th century technology for way too long. To generate electricity. It's just ridiculous. And, aside from the climate change concerns.
Yeah. And I've been very fortunate to spend a lot of time traveling, been to a lot of places around the world. I've spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, and I've seen what the Chinese government is doing to a lot of those communities, and how, they lend vast sums of money that a community can't pay back, and then they just repossess an entire port in Cambodia, is something that I saw when I was down there. So there's a lot of stuff that I don't like about the Chinese government, and I like to remind myself that inefficiency is the cost of individual freedom. And I'm obviously on the side of individual freedom, but if we're going to have a bunch of individuals who are free, we're not going to be able to move as fast as a country who can just say, we're just bulldozing this town and we're going to put solar over here.
Right. Yeah, and nobody's proposing to do that. It's not like a mandate. It's like they talk about EVs, and there's an EV mandate. There's no EV mandate. If you want to keep driving an internal combustion engine vehicle, okay, yeah, you can do that. If you want to drive an EV, you can do that. The same with clean energy. Just a level playing field would be great, right? I think that's all the industry would like, is a level playing field, and it's clearly stacked against, solar, wind, batteries. I guess they're still in play, but yeah, it's a very weird time that we are living in. Not just in clean energy, but across the board, it seems.
Yeah, and I had a British friend years ago who, when I was still traveling, we spent a lot of time together, and he said something that stuck with me ever since. He was like, Americans are just religious extremists about everything. It's like, even things you guys don't understand, you pick an issue that you don't understand very well, and you're like, this is my position, and everything, all the information I choose will reinforce this point because I've attached it to my identity. And unfortunately, that's been magnified since then in our cultural war stuff that we have going on, and all of this division that ultimately only serves powerful people and doesn't serve the people of the United States. But there's so many people who, like, just because their identity is one way and just because they follow certain politicians, they believe that we should generate our energy a certain way and don't actually understand just how quick and easy and awesome it is to just throw solar on something. Like, we have so many rooftops that we can just cover with solar.
Yeah. We don't have to, to go out into fields. Of course, you can do that. There's agrivoltaics and things that make sense. There's farmland
right next to Jack's solar garden. It's amazing.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I mean, there's those solutions. There's some farms where it maybe it doesn't make sense. I grew up in a farm community, and I understand that a little bit. And every situation's a little bit different. So, you got to factor all that stuff in. But let me ask you this. The folks that think, all right, fossil fuel is the only way to go, how long do you think it'll take them to actually realize, hey, solar and wind and battery storage and things like that is what the future is? It's the present, but it's also what the future is. I mean, are they going to have to experience blackouts and super high electricity prices before they maybe open up a little bit? Or you think no matter what, they're just going to be anti-renewable?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you're going to have a certain segment that will be anti-renewable just because they've been told to be. I think they're going to die on the hill. That makes me think of a neighbor I had when I was living in a very conservative town in Western Colorado. And, I consider myself politically independent. I don't want to sound like I'm pushing too much for one side or the other. I work in an industry that one side tends to be more favorable to us, but personally, I try to think independently to the degree that I can. But that makes me think of a man that lived next door to me when I was living in this very conservative town, basically right outside the gates of the apartment complex I was living in. And he was very conservative. Nice guy when you talk to him, but just so in the hole of like Fox News. And I was living there when Joe Biden won the election, and he put up this big spray painted sign that was like a old piece of poster board that said cheating is not winning, but he spelled winning wrong. And this man he was like morbidly alcoholic. He lived in a pile of scrap metal in his front yard. I mean, he was, very nice when I met him, but just like such a messed up life. And I remember seeing him put up that sign, and I was like, why do you think they care about you? Like, what are you protecting here? What about this is so awesome that you think someone who disagrees with you is going to come take it from you? And so I think for anyone to get to that point, I mean, there's so much change that needs to happen in our society in terms of just pulling our grandparents. Like, I lost my grandpa to Fox News years ago. It's just like, he just goes deeper and deeper into the hole. And there's so much that has to happen with pulling people back towards the middle and getting them away from media channels where they're like, these people are trying to steal your livelihood. These people are going to ruin your life. These people are going to like try to, deploy renewable energy and ruin the whole grid. And so I think there's a much wider conversation there of there's just certain people who are never going to come along. And there's certain people who just need to be pulled away and shown love and shown that we're not trying to steal their life. And, there's interactions that need to happen in communities, and I don't know how to foster them because we're just so on our screens and so polarized. But for that to happen, I mean, there's just got to be a reckoning where a lot of people finally realize that the people they think are fighting for them don't care about them at all.
Yeah, I think you make a really important point that some people, it seems they really want to be part of a group or a movement and have that feeling of belonging to something that maybe is bigger than them, or they feel that it's bigger than them. And they're so blinded by that they've got no, I'll say, open mind to any other point of view, anything that may be counter to what they have been taught or what they want to believe. Because, I mean, hey, the internet's great, but if you want to find something, pro your position, you can find it. If you want to find something against that position, easy to find that too, right? It's sorting through and filtering what's the truth and making that decision for yourself. And that's one thing I tell people: hey, don't take my word for it. Go and do your own research, because that's what I do. I'll hear something on a podcast or on the news report or this and that, or read it in an article. I'm going to do a little bit more digging if it's something, I'm very curious about to understand, is this true or is it not? What makes sense here and what doesn't? Because headlines, I mean, it's all clickbait, right? Everybody wants you to get on their article, and it's like, this has nothing, you get into it, it has nothing to do with what you think you're going to be reading about. But if you just go by the headline, it's like, oh my gosh, look what happened. That's such a travesty.
Yeah. And I do think we should be cautious of thinking that's new too. I mean, Mark Twain said in the 1800s, the truth can go, or a lie can go around the world twice before the truth finishes tying its shoes. And
that's
there's just like the speed of misinformation is different. But misinformation is not new. I was just reading a book about Teddy Roosevelt and how a bunch of people slandered something he was doing before he went to war with Cuba, and had made this big decision about him, and all the newspapers were smearing him for something he had never even done, just because some misinformation traveled across the country. So I do think that's very human. And I think it's very human to try to feel safe by joining a group. And it's very human to not question that group so that you can belong to it. And it's very human to have an enemy and think that, that enemy is just one-dimensionally evil, and they're not as human as you are, and they're just trying to antagonize people for no reason. I think all of that is very human, and I think we're trying to think of ourselves as a global consciousness, but it's very, very difficult. I remember this interview I listened to with the Dalai Lama, where he was like, the concept of human rights came about in my lifetime. It's a post-World War II idea. No one had written that down until we went so crazy that we could blow up entire cities. And then we finally thought, okay, maybe we should have some ground rules. So I do think it's very difficult, but that is the mission of our time, is how do we step out of tribalism and step into what's best for humanity and start realizing that, power is never going to be incentivized to care for people as much as we can care for ourselves in our communities.
Yeah, I think that's well said also. I mean, to me, kind of wrapping that part of it up, I do feel that most people, I'm not going to say everybody, but I think for the most part, most people, whatever political party you're affiliated with, are pretty much good people, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want to help, they want to do this and that. And again, I'm not saying everybody, I'm going to say the majority are. And I always try to keep that in mind when somebody's hating on me or whatever. All right, man, who knows what's going on in their life? maybe something big is happening, whatever. Hopefully you can have some open dialogue and talk with these folks, but a lot of times you can't. It's just a difficult time, that's made even more difficult with keyboard warriors, talking behind, fake profiles here and there, because that's where most of the discourse is. I don't think anything I say online, I would say it right to the person's face in person, right? I'm just going to be respectful, and if I disagree, I'm just going to, hey, I don't think you're wrong, and here's why. I don't know that you have as much in person as you do online. People get really brave, I think, with the keyboard. So I don't know. But well, let me ask you this. Let's get back to solar here and kind of wrap up with that.
Yeah.
This week in solar, I want to hear a little bit more about that. And it's under 5 minutes, right? Which I think is great because attention spans are pretty short these days. So what's the secret to getting your message across and giving these updates in that 5 minutes or so that you do every week with This Week in Solar?
Yeah, it's really just condensing things into the smallest story that I can. I think I find 3 news stories every week. Yesterday, I only had 2, but I find I usually include a local one and 1 or 2 federal policy stories that affect solar. The reason that we decided to put it together was because I kept doing policy updates for the team internally, and we realized that we're putting so much work into it to just comb through all of these different news sources that if I was going to do this and then film a video to update the team anyway, then we should just make that public. And I had been doing all of that work on LinkedIn for a little over a year that was to that point just for me. And my manager was like, why don't you try to grow something? And I'm laughing because I tend to get super excited and try to jump into things, and then I get involved in too many things. And my manager, Alyssa, was like, here's something that you can grow. Leave me alone. And so as soon as I had that, I ran with it, and I was like, man, I'm going to make this the best thing that I can. And so I haven't told anybody this yet, but I sent over 1,000 LinkedIn DMs over the course of starting that, and have gotten more than 300 and I think 320 as of this morning people to join the newsletter. And we've repurposed an old YouTube channel that we had, and I'm having a great time doing it. But I just condensed the news stories down to the smallest piece possible, and then summarized the whole thing in 5 minutes so that anyone who's been just trying to comb through stories all week to try to figure out what matters can just have those little tidbits and then move on with their week.
Yeah, that's very valuable. I'm a fan, I can tell you that, because there are so many stories out there. I get notifications. I'm on so many mailing lists, and then just all the filters I've got to bring these stories to me, because like you need to understand what's going on, right? So that's so important. And I think 5 minutes is fantastic. I love what you're doing with that. So Aaron, where can people follow you, connect, and I'd say very importantly, catch each episode of This Week in Solar?
Yeah, so you can search This Week in Solar Substack or This Week in Solar YouTube, and it will come up for either one of those. I would love it if you joined our Substack. I'm having so much fun running that little platform. I think it's an amazing website, and it's such a cool place to build something. And if you just want to follow me for my insights and ideas on storytelling and just whatever is on my mind, you can go to my LinkedIn, just search Aaron Nichols LinkedIn. I am the most popular Aaron Nichols on LinkedIn. I finally did it. I'm not the most popular Aaron Nichols on any other platform, but on LinkedIn, I did it.
Congrats.
Thank you. So, yeah. And other than that, remember, stories stick, facts fade.
Again, well said. Aaron Nichols, thanks so much for joining us. And for everybody listening, if you like these conversations without the fluff, subscribe to Zero Distortion. That way you won't miss the next one. We'll be back with more no filter, no spin conversations on the next one. Thanks so much.